I'm Luis Vázquez. I'm a Regents professor, and I'm also the Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies at New Mexico State University. So let me give you a little bit about myself, and then we're going to go right into the presentation. I was born in inner city Southside Chicago, born in and raised in Illinois. We only spoke Spanish at home. I'm a first-generation college student. My mother went up to second grade, never learned to read or write, except to write her name. My father only went up to seventh grade, only spoke basically Spanish, very little, if any, English at all. We only spoke Spanish at home, and I lived in almost a totally Mexican neighborhood. And we were right next to the black neighborhood, so we all hung out together. What ended up happening was I only spoke Spanish when I was a kid, and that was it. We lived in a two-bedroom house. My six brothers and I slept in one room, and mom and dad in the other. We had double bunk beds, so we slept two people at the bottom of each bunk bed and one at the top, and I got to have the couch. And I was raised like that all the way to almost 17, 18 years old. The reason I'm telling you this is because I'm going to tell you about the culture of money and how you spend money. By the way, when I first started school, since I only spoke Spanish, they didn't know what to do with me. So I got tested. They diagnosed me as educationally, mentally handicapped. I was put in special education. Back then, they called it retarded. So I spent my first 2 years in special education, never learned to read and write. I took care of kids that were in wheelchairs, wore helmets. And every time we spoke Spanish in class, we got brought up to the front of the class and we got paddled. So you weren't even allowed to speak Spanish. And it wasn't until almost fourth grade that I started to learn to read and write. And so, but I had people around me, that were nice to me, kind to me, and some mentors. And by the way, I used to stutter a lot. I used to go, I couldn't get words out. And the teachers thought I was retarded. So I'm going to tell you one little story that helped me. I had to go to the groceries with my mother all the time. So I spoke Spanish. So if I came back with the wrong change, and I was 6, 7 years old, of course, back then, it was called discipline. It'd be called something else today. So I learned to divide, subtract, multiply, and add by the age of 6. So when I took a test in school, they were testing us to see how much we knew about math. I got all the equations right, and then they accused me of cheating. That's when I was 7 years old. So then they went back, and they put 2 teachers above me, and they said, okay. And back then they changed my name to Louis or Louis. I hated it. My name's Luis Antonio. But anyway, so they stood above me and they gave me a harder test. And guess what? I got 100% again. And then one of the teachers goes, oh my God, he's doing all this in his head. And so I got put in the highest math classes, but I still have remedial English, remedial math, and all that kind of stuff. But to make a long story short, I ended up becoming a psychologist. How could I not, right? At home, I was Luis Antonio. At school, I was Luis Vázquez, which I hated with a passion. So I had a split personality for a while. And then I pulled it all together, ended up getting my doctorate degree. And so what I want to talk to you today about the culture of money. And you're all going to understand what I mean when I tell you this about the culture of money. So here we go. We're going to learn some things today related to money and how we spend, because you've already heard where the money is. You heard about assistantships. You heard about research fellowships. You heard about graduate and research labs that you get to work in. You heard about fellowships. But I'm going to tell you something nobody's told you about. I'm going to talk to you about your loans, the decisions you make, how you make them, and how you get there. Okay? So I'm going to talk to you about funding sources, what happens to you, how much in debt you become after time, and where it all goes, and the decisions you make. But you need to learn about the funding and how to make these decisions, okay? And how to reduce your loan debt. So let's get started. Okay, now, all of you know that you are special, right? Because look at this chart. There's less than high school education for African Americans, for Blacks. Okay, less than high school, about 15, 20%. Okay, those that graduate from high school, about 33%. Look what happens when you get to your degrees, your bachelor's and master's degrees. Where are you at? Less than 15, 12%. Now, let's look at Latinos, Hispanics. Okay, less than high school? Oh my God, almost 30%. Okay, getting a high school degree, about 33%. So you have already made it all the way up to the bachelor's degree levels, which for African Americans, it comes out to about 13%, 14%. And for Hispanics, even lower than that. So you are special. And you don't even know it, do you? How many knew you were special? You can raise your hand. Heck with the electronic stuff. How many knew you were special? Okay, well, let's take a look at what that really means, okay? Educational attainment by race and ethnicity. Okay, high school, 35% for African-American men. Okay, for less than high school, 12.6%. Master's degree, 5.8. Professional, and that's when you get into your engineering degrees and so forth. Oh my God, you almost hit a 0.6%. So you're almost in the top 0.6% of your population if you go on to the next degree. What do you make of that? Any comments? Let's look at it at the Hispanics. Okay, high school, 32%, 32.9 for men. Men, okay, professional degrees, 0.5%, doctorate, 0.7. Well, let's see the women. Let's check out the women since we have more women in this group. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay. High school, 30.6% for Black women. Okay, let's go to, let me see, master's degree, 8.3. Professionals, engineering degrees, 0.9%. A little bit higher than the men. A little bit higher than the men. And looking for doctorate, 1.1%. Okay, Latinos, let's take a look. Latinx, where we're hitting at. Okay, let me see. Master's degree, 4.5. Professional degrees, 0.4%. And doctorate degrees, 0.7. Any comments right now on what I just said? Are you shocked or did you already know this?
Very shocked.
I already knew this. My dad sat me down and told me this when I was coming to college.
Ooh. And what did you think when he told you that?
It was different because he has been in the US longer than we have. So coming in, he was like, yeah, you're going to college, but you're going into a men's filled world and you were a double minority because you were Black and you were a woman. And, he kind of gave me the statistics because he's an engineer as well. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. I would think there's more, but there's not.
No, this is it, folks. What do you think? This is just 2017. I was trying to get to 2020 and it hasn't come out yet on this chart. But as soon as I get that, I'm going to throw that out there too. But this is it. Okay, so let's take a look at the next chart. Okay, graduate enrollment. Look at this. Look how many, and see, Black men and Black women enroll. 36% of all of our Black men enroll, 63%. Now, remember what I did? Just supposed to tell you for master's degree, 0.7% make it. And yet, here you go, man, only 36% enroll, 36% enroll and less than 0.7% get out. Okay, let's take a look at Latinos here. 44.3% of the men enroll and 55.7% of the women. So what does that tell you, men? Well, I should say man. There's only one there in the group. My brother, what does that tell you?
We are rare.
Yes, you are. And look what happened in 2015-16. You would have thought, see, the numbers went up. Well, they went down for men, okay, enrolling, but they went up even higher for women, 70.2%. And for Latino and Latinx, you got 39.2%. for men and 60.8% as compared to what? 55. So what does that tell you? The women are moving ahead, folks. And they should, because many of them are in single households, have a lot of responsibility, take care of everything in the world. I know because I'm married to a beautiful Mexican-American woman that also has a doctorate in psychology with me. And we got our doctorates together from the University of Iowa with 2 children. Let's go to the next chart. Okay, so I need to talk to you about the culture of student income poverty because many of our students drop out because they can't afford it. Why? Lack of financial knowledge. How many of you knew how much college was going to cost before you started? How many? Raise your hand. Don't use electronic stuff, just raise your hand. How many of you knew already? Okay, you got 2. Okay. How many of you knew about affordable financial services? Where to go to help you manage your money? How many of you knew? Wow, nobody. How about financial behaviors of high risk? Do you know what that means? Spending money when you don't have it, but you think you'll make up for it, and it never happens. Wow, okay, 50. Financial stability of decisions. How many of you, when you make a financial decision, take a look at how it's going to impact you 3 years down the road? Oh, only 1? Oh my God. Okay, we squeezed out 2 there. We squeezed out 2. Lack of long-term economic development for the future. How many of you, when you were in college, started thinking, I wonder what's going to be like when I have my career and get going? 4 of you. Okay, finally, yes. Man, I'm feeling better already. Lack of developing informed financial decisions for the best interest, not only of you and your family. How many of you have thought about that? 1, 2, okay. Inability to mitigate risk and income shocks. You know what that means? That's another way of saying have an emergency, you got something saved up. How many of you have something saved up for an emergency? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that means that you're going to still keep your housing and be able to eat. That's good. Lack of increasing assets of security. That means what do you own that's worth something in case you ever have to do something with it? 1. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to teach you because everybody's taught you about where the money is and how to apply. Nobody's taught you about how to manage. Okay, so we need to learn how to manage because students need to learn about financial capability, financial inclusion, and structural barriers. And you know why? Let me tell you why. Because many of us, and our parents did this too, because my parents were poor. So when they wanted to get a loan, guess where they went? Payday lenders. Do you know that payday lenders take off 15% for every dollar you borrow? 15 cents every dollar, okay? That's $15 to every 100, $30 to every 200. And at 500, they take 60. And by the time they get to 800, they've already taken 100 off of you just to go get a loan there. How many of you have been to a pawn shop where you try to take in something that's worthwhile because you need some money to eat and you need somebody to pay rent? How many of you have done that? Oh my God, we got some smart students here. Pawn shops, you're lucky if you're going to get 20% of whatever item you take in there that's worth. How many of you have high interest credit cards? I'm talking 21 to 27%. Nobody has a credit card? Oh my God. Ponzi schemes. How many of you thought if you gave 500, you get 5,000 back by getting into one of those schemes that rip you off? How many of you have done that? None of you? You know what? I'm starting to feel good about this group already. Oh my God. How many of you have gone to check cashing outlets where they take 20% of each dollar to cash your check? And that's just to cash it. You're not even borrowing. Okay, we got 1. Okay, did it go up to $500 to cash a check? Or were $100 checks?
They didn't get that much.
All right. How many of you gone on loan sharks? Those are people that promise you these great loans and, and then you come back and you realize they're 30, 40% if you don't pay them back in 2 weeks. None of you. That's a good sign. How many of you have put stuff on consignment and say, go borrow money from the lender and say, okay, you can keep my car title and I'm going to borrow $500. And if I don't pay it back in 2 weeks, then they start to sell your car. Oh, this group's smarter than I thought it was. How many of you tried to transfer money and wire money back home and you lose 30% of it because you don't have an account at your bank? Okay. So many of us have to learn our own history of our relationship with money, buying cars, supporting family members, doing without. Some of us, when we get our money, whether it be loans or whether it be any type of money, to save money, okay, we won't buy health insurance or get the cheapest one we can. How many of you have health insurance right now? Only 2 of you? Oh my gosh. Be careful, please.
I'm sorry, our own house insurance or?
Your own health insurance.
Health insurance, right?
Yes.
Okay. What? Yeah, I have with my dad.
Okay, well, good. Okay, so you're
yeah.
covered. Okay, good. How many of you, to save money, rented in an apartment complex that wasn't as safe as it could be? All right, we got some smart people. How many of you can afford enough to buy your own food right now? Oh, thank God. I was going to say, if you're starving, I'm going to talk to Dr. Perkins, send you some money for food then. Okay, here we go. So these are the things that impact how you make your decision. So culture matters. Culture matters. Did you know when you all come from collectivistic cultures? Do you know what that means? Collectivistic culture means that you're happy when the family's happy. When the family's happy, you're happy. Individualistic cultures is, as long as I'm happy, everybody else can get over it. That's the difference between the two. So individualistic cultures do better with money because they don't let everything else around them get to them. The rest of us actually care about each other and do everything we can to make sure that everybody's safe, everybody's happy, and everybody is in a state of mind that we can help each other out. So when you have financial programs, you need and we need to teach you about what are your habits? What is your history? What is your relationship with your money? It needs to be based on human development, your own dignity, and social justice. There needs to be equity in the world for you to be able to move forward. So I'm going to show you how to do some of these things. Okay, here we go. Okay, now, some of you have already seen these, but I'm going to share with you anyway. Can you see this? Direct subsidized loans? How many of you have a direct subsidized loan? You don't have to tell me how much, just do you have one? Okay, one of you. Okay, did you see that you can borrow up to $5,000? Undergraduate students with demonstrated financial need? How about direct, subsidized loan means that you're going to get your interest paid while you're in school. Okay, guess what happens as soon as you graduate, 6 months after you graduate?
It starts adding.
Yeah, that's right. You got to start paying back and the interest starts getting in there. Direct unsubsidized student loans. You can borrow up to $20,500. And guess what? Many of us borrow it. Many of us borrow it. That's at 4.45% for undergraduates, 6% for graduates. What does that mean? You have to pay the interest while you're in school. How about direct parent loan plus? You know what that means? You talk your parents into co-signing for you. How many did that? Ooh, man, your parents must love you.
My mom does. My dad said no. My dad said no.
And then we had direct graduate plus loans. These are unsubsidized for graduate and professional students. Need is not a factor, but you can borrow and the borrower cannot have adverse credit. In other words, you got to have good credit to get that direct grad plus loans, but guess what? 7%, and you pay it as you go. You have the direct consolidation loan. That's when you take all your loans together and you bring them to, you can have one big payment, and then the weighted average of the interest rates on the loans being consolidated are rounded up to the nearest 1/8 or 1%. So if the average of your loans is about, between 6 to 8%, you're going to pay 7% on interest rate. You know what 7% is on $40,000? That's $2,800. But you see, when you take loans, it's compounded. You know what that means? Each year you pay 7% on the amount you owe until you pay it off. So some of you may be making payments into the afterlife. That was a joke. You're supposed to laugh when I say that, okay? Right. And then you have federal Perkins loans, and no, it's not related to Dr. Perkins. Okay, this is need-based loan where the institution is the lender. They can lend you up to $5,500, and so and then that's at 5%, lower percent. You don't get charged the interest after you graduate. So what begins to happen here? Look at how much we normally borrow. Okay, for subsidized and unsubsidized loan, undergraduates usually borrow right now about $6,660, but that's not what you want to look at. Okay, I'm going to tell you in a second. Graduate students borrow $19,250 for subsidized or unsubsidized loans. Okay. Now, for plus loans, most undergraduates borrow $17,220. That's between 2018 and 2019 on the average. Graduate students borrow about $25,950. This is what you need to look at. Most students that begin to borrow loans borrow both subsidized, unsubsidized, or plus. You know what that means? You add that $17,220 for an undergrad with that $6,000, and what do you owe? Almost $24,000. That's before you even get out to go to graduate school, right? Are you still with me? How many are still with me? Okay. Now, if you're a graduate student and you borrow $19,000 for subsidized and unsubsidized loan, chances are you're probably going to borrow a plus loan too. Okay, so what's $25,900? That's almost $26,000 plus $20,000. $46,000 for your graduate degree. And you heard Dr. Jones in his presentation, they pay tuition, they will pay your stipend, they pay housing, they pay insurance, many of these things, different fellowships and so forth. And so, but many of our students don't know this. So what do? Oh man, easy loan. Just sign here. And guess what you do? You sign there. So let's take a look at what the average is that you would actually spend. For all graduate degree programs on the average, you would probably owe about $22,400 if you're African American, and for Latino and Latinx, about $23,262. Okay, that's for all graduate programs across. Now let's take a look for master's degrees, because most of you will be going into either a professional or a master's degree. Okay, you would end up borrowing for African Americans, about 70% of you are going to borrow close to 20 grand right off the top. How many of you have already done that? Thank God. Okay. And for Latinos, let me see, you're going to borrow close to 19,000. So what does that mean? Okay. And you're borrowing by type of loan. I thought I'd break it down for you just so you have an idea. By the way, this PowerPoint's available to you, so make sure you download it so you can keep track of these things. Between 2015 and 2016, for professional degrees, the average amount borrowed by African Americans is $55,498, and it was borrowed by 89% receiving loans. What do you think of that? Are you in shock yet? I would be. Let's go to the next one. Okay, doctoral degrees. The average doctoral degree person, African-American, is about 59%. They borrow maybe 17,000, and for Latina and Latinx, about 20,000. Do you know why that is? How many of you know why that is? Take a guess. Okay, I'm going to tell you. The reason you borrow less during a doctoral program is because most doctoral programs give you a graduate assistantship. They help you out, okay, with tuition. They try to help you, sometimes even help you out with a housing stipend. For the professional degrees, master's degrees, the next level up, not all master's people get a assistantship. Not all master's people get a tuition stipend. So what ends up happening is you end up borrowing 55 to 60,000 right off the bat. So have I scared you yet? Okay, now we're going to get into the real stuff. Now take a look. Now, as you can see, how many of you pay off your loans? Okay, for African Americans, about Let's see, 56% of you are still paying your loans even after you graduate. Okay. And 20% are behind. That means that you're still paying in. About 76% of your loans are still being paid in after you graduate. Okay, let's take a look at Latinx Latinos. Let me see, 45%, 68% are still either paying off or behind in their debt. And then the white population, 47%. Okay, are still paying off, but 53% have already paid off their loans. Only 24% for Black and 32% for Latinos. What do you think? Quick opinion, what do you think?
Seems pretty accurate. My mom's still paying off her loans, and she graduated a while ago.
Wow, she's still paying? How long has she been out?
At least
her name or nothing.
at least 10 years. At least 10 years.
10 years and she's still paying, huh? Wow. How about the rest of you?
I know for my sister, she just graduated in 2019, so she started paying hers off. And my mom just graduated August of last year, so she and my dad are like making plans to start paying off that part of it. So.
Okay. So they're still paying off loans. So let's take a look. But look at, I need to show you this because this is very interesting here. Are you ready? Most of us take us 20, 30 years to pay off our student loans, right? But then we buy a house, let's say about $185,000 house. And we have to put 20% down. You know what that means? That you got to put about $45,000 down to get that $185,000 house. So we borrow the $45,000 to borrow the $185,000 to try to get the best interest rate so we can pay into the afterlife. I call it the afterlife. Look at what happens when you buy a car. Average car right now between 25 to about 36,000, somewhere in there. Okay, you know, some of us want to buy an Audi. You know, we want to be cool. Some of us want to buy a Tesla. Maybe it's electric this coming year. You never know. Some of us buy a Ford. But those loans are how long? 5 to 8 years, right? And we pay those off in 5 to 8 years at what? 10%, 9% interest. And car loses depreciation. It depreciates every year. However, we pay that off, don't we? How many of you have cars you're making loan payments on? One. Anybody else? Okay. I bought my first car when I was at Illinois State University undergrad. It only went backwards. This guy was going to the Navy in 1968 Buick LeSabre. Transmission was a little messed up. Beautiful stereo in it. Okay, the stereo was worth about $500. I sold that stereo for $180. I fixed the transmission for $100. And my tires were bald. So I went to the junkyard to find the best tires I could. And I put them on for $5 a piece. And I drove that car without insurance or anything. And then because I needed a car to go to work, right? Because I found a job. Guess what happened? And this is what I mean about the culture of poverty. My brother found a job and he needed to get to work. And he had no way to go to work. I gave him my car. So I did without. I did without. You know what I'm talking about, man. I did without. Some of us want to get married and our parents can't afford us. We got to pay it ourselves. I've seen students take out student loans to pay for their wedding. Some of us want a swimming pool in the back, extra $34,000. Some of us want to start our own business. I heard yesterday about many of you want to start your own business. You're going to have to borrow money for your business to keep it going. Okay, now look at what happens. Okay, the payments that we do the worst on, okay, you know, like our student loan payments, credit card payments, and auto payments and so forth. Okay, our student loan payments are the ones that we are most delinquent on. Take a look at that chart. What do you think? This is 2019, by the way. I just got this. A lot of us don't like to pay our student loans because we don't see the value. However, look at the thing we pay the most. Our mortgage, why? We need a roof over our head. Auto, man, we pay that next. We don't want to lose the car. Oh, gotta keep the car. Gotta keep the car. Credit card. We just pay enough to make the minimum payment, even though we're going to go into the afterlife because, we borrow more than we should have with the credit card. And so, and what happens when you make the minimum payment? That minimum payment is what? Your interest in your card. It is not going toward the principal. What's the principal? The amount you actually borrowed versus the interest, which is the amount you're being charged to borrow. When you give minimum payment, it only pays the amount that you charge to borrow, but not the actual amount that you borrow. Does that make sense? Okay, here we go. So let's talk about how not to get borrowed. Well, yesterday you heard Dr. Jones talk about research and training grants, scholarships and fellowships. Research and training grants, they pay for your tuition and they give you a stipend. Most of them do. And you get to work with faculty and you get to get published. Sometimes you get to travel to conferences. Sometimes you get opportunities to teach other students in labs. That's exciting. Sometimes you get scholarships. Scholarships are great. Fellowships. Sometimes you get it to recruitment because people want you so bad they're willing to pay to have you there. Special needs. Maybe they have an area that they need special students with special skills. Faculty associated. I have a grant right now. I hired 2 graduate students. I'm paying their tuition and I'm also paying their stipend. So they're not paying anything to go to graduate school right now. An assistantship, teaching assistantship. I'm at the graduate school. I get $9.4 million a year to spread across 6 different colleges to help them make decisions on who gets hired as graduate assistants to teach, also for research, and also for graduate assistants helping out with labs and grading and so forth. Those out of those, we did 852 this past year that we paid for 852 students. Out of those students, 432 students got also their tuition paid with it. And you know what the beauty is of these types of funding? You do not pay it back. None of these are loans. None of these are loans. They're not subsidized loans. They're not unsubsidized loans. They're not Stafford loans. They're not Perkins loans. And they carry no interest. But you know what you do have to do? Your interest rate on this is directly related to the grades that you get. You get 3-pointer above every semester, you get to keep your assistantship. What do you think of that? You all got one? One? No? Only one person has a GA-ship here? Oh, that's right. This is undergraduate, right? 2. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. Let's go to the next one here. Okay. Scholarships, awards given to students based on academic excellence. You got to keep your grades up. You receive scholarships based on factors like ethnic background sometimes, field of study, financial need. I actually have a grant that Dr. Jones and we collaborated with some other people on financial capability. And guess what? That's how we're funding our students. And guess what? That's how we fund other university students too. And that's what we use it. And guess what? MATC with this conference, whether you're from University of Nebraska or not, we're also helping fund you too. Scholarships, yeah, it depends on the amounts. I'm not going to go a lot through this because you heard about this for the last 2 days from various presenters. Okay, let's go to the next one here. Okay, fellowships. You get recruited the first year. By the way, be aware, sometimes the recruitment scholarship only lasts 1 year. And then you're going, well, what about the second year? Well, we never promised you that. What are you talking about? Well, what about, no, we never said that either. You didn't read the letter that you got that told you what you were going to get and for how long? I know that happened to me. Special needs associated with a college or department. We may need more women in engineering. So guess what? We'll put aside some money to increase the amount of women that we get. We may need some more people in fields like psychology. We'll go after it. And then the faculty. Some of us write grants. I write grants. So guess what? I get to fund my own students and I have money to fund. And I love it. I love it. And students come back 6 years later and said, man, you're so hard on me. But guess what? I'm successful. And let me tell you what I did. Okay, teaching assistantships. How many of you have been in labs before, conducted studies and things like that? None of you? 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Those experiences, hey, make sure you put them in your letter when you're applying. Grading undergraduate student papers. I used to love that because I used to have, we used to teach a class of 150 students in it. I was the one that kept everybody's grades. And they had to come to me to talk to me, the undergraduates. And I would tell the undergraduates, okay, let me tell you where you messed up. How much time are you studying? What are you doing with the extra time? Are you working a lot? Who are you taking care of? What's going on with you? Okay, benefits of faculty, a lot. We cannot function without you, and we need you. But guess what? You're never going to find out about your research assistantships. You're never going to find out what they do, and you're never going to be involved in one unless you talk to your faculty. You talk to the people here at MATC and you tell them, hey, I'm interested in doing these different things because I want to do these different things. Okay, this is when you get in trouble. No savings for emergencies, not meeting guidelines, incurring a lot of school debt, not knowing the difference between funding sources, changing or not changing advisors, and what that means. So you have to decide what it is that you want to do. Okay, now I'm going to hit the budget calculator. Let me see if it works here. What this is a budget calculator. Let me tell you what your homework's going to be. Your homework's going to be is you're going to go through each one of these sheets. Each one of these sheets will tell you, like for instance, the first one will be how much money do you get? How much money will it cost you to go to school? So what the school you're currently at, I want you to actually take account and sit down. This is a serious assignment. Okay, you sit down and you actually do it and go step by step. So step 1, it'll ask you, I believe, how much it's going to cost you to go. I mean, how much you get. The second one will ask you what things cost, and it breaks it down for you so you can put in numbers, and it'll calculate it for you. Okay. The third sheet will ask you what are your monthly payments versus what it is at one-time only type things that you need to pay for. And guess what? Your step 4 will actually tell you how much you're short or how much you're in the black, or if you're just breaking even. The reason you have to do this is because you have to learn how to manage your money. Many of us are willing to give up everything we can to help our family, to either eat, which is, that's necessary, to pay rent, and so forth. I know, because when I first got to college, I didn't know anything about how much it was going to cost. When I first got there, I got my bill for $3,300. That was back in 1975. And this is what happened to me. I realized that I had to find a job. I became a Pickerton security guard. I worked 11 to 7 graveyard shift. I went to classes from 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I slept from 1 to 10 every day. And I worked from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. I got paid $2.13 an hour. I made $89 a week take home. I didn't have enough money to pay. So for that first month, before I got my first month paycheck, I bought a gallon of peanut butter. I bought a gallon of jelly, the cheap stuff. And I went to the Wonder Bread Company on Tuesdays, and they let you use old bread for 5 cents a loaf. And I ate peanut butter and jelly for a whole month for breakfast, lunch, and dinner until I got my first check. A true story. And you know what happened? I look at peanut butter and jelly now and I can't eat it. and then when my father called me and said, hey, Luis, how you doing? And you know what I told him? Oh, Dad, it's the best time I ever had in my life. Oh, Dad, I'm doing really good. Oh, Dad, you will not believe how great I'm doing. And when I hung up the phone, I slid down the wall, sat on the floor, and I cried like a little baby because I knew none of that was true. But I had so much pride, and I didn't want to ask my dad for anything. You have to remember, I still had 6 younger brothers at home. He worked in a factory making $100 a week in a little 2-bedroom house. So I asked for nothing. In case you're wondering, I didn't know anything about scholarships. I didn't know anything about grants. I didn't know anything about loans. I worked full-time and went to school full-time and graduated with my bachelor's degree in 5 years. And I paid it all cash. You don't have to do what I did. You don't have to do what I did. I'm going to open it up for questions right now. Questions? Feel free to ask whatever you want. Okay, now I can tell you, this is step one. This is your homework, and you got to do it because I'm going to ask you when you come back. Look at step one. What kind of scholarships you got? Research, teaching, or graduate assistantships? Off-campus job? You could do your current one now because you're undergrad. You may not have the first two, but if you want to, pick a university you think you might want to go to for graduate and see what you need to get. And you can put numbers in there. And guess what? When you hit step two, watch. Can you put some numbers
All right.
in there?
Yep,
Any numbers
I'm
you want?
sticking something in there now. Let me
Okay.
see.
And then when you
Step two.
Yeah, let's go to step two. It's going to ask you, how much is your rent going to be? How much are your utilities going to be each month? How much are your groceries going to be? How much is your transportation, entertainment, things you never think about? I expect all of you to have this filled out for next week. And you go from step to step, step to step. Okay, let's go to step three. Okay, these are one-time expenses, your books and supplies. You only pay for one time for the semester. Car
Okay.
registration, if you have a car.
All right.
Insurance, health, moving expenses. Well, I only had one suitcase when I went to college, so that was my moving expense. Lab research expenses. It depends. If you had some labs, some classes you take, they charge you a lab fee to be in the class. Professional associations, income taxes. You're going to have to pay those whether you want to or not. How much is your tuition going to be? Your travel, your vacations, non-monthly expenses. So watch what happens when we go to the next level. What does it tell you there? Your expenses are higher than your total available funding. Consider reducing your monthly annual expenses or obtaining additional funding so you may meet your personal and educational related expenses. What do you think, students? Does this help you?
So they can create a PDF of it or? Okay.
Yeah. You can print the page and you can keep it. What I would do is print it and probably tack it onto your wall or have it on the plate. So every time you get the urge to go to one of these malls and buy some cool stuff, because let me tell you what the culture probably does to you. Even now at my age, 2 months ago, I went to Dillard's, which is in the mall, to buy some clothes, right? I saw this beautiful leather jacket. It was $200. And then they said, hey, Dr. E, yeah, they're going to have a sale here, 35% off in 2 weeks. So I went in 2 weeks, right? And it was 35% off, and it was $200. So at 35% off, I got what? $70 off. Okay. So it was 130. And I said, well, they gotta be better. And then it said, but if you wait another month, we're going to have 50% off. I go, oh man, I'm going to wait. And I can afford it. I actually make good money. So I go back again and guess what happened? The coat, my size wasn't there no more. Gone. So you know what I said? Oh, well, it wasn't meant to be. I guess God didn't want me to have it. So I never bought the jacket. And I'm going to end with my last story here. When I was back in high school, I mowed grass all summer long. I wanted to buy a pair of Levi bell bottoms, right? And Sullivan's store was the one that sold the Levi bell bottoms. I saved $11 because back then you could mow a whole yard and rake it and you got 50 cents. Yeah, Kennedy $50, 50 cents. Okay, I saved all my money. I went into Sullivan's. I tried on all the pants. And you got to make sure that the lines and the creases are just right. I tried on the pants over there. Miss Sullivan, she was pretty cool. And Miss Sullivan said, well, Luis, she goes, so I went in to buy the jeans. I tried them on. I was in there for about 2 hours trying on different jeans. I go to give her the money and there was a little plastic glad bag. And I go, I was 16 years old. I go, here you go. And then I looked at my, I couldn't let the money go. And I said, hey, and she goes, why don't you come back in 2 weeks? So I said, okay, I'll come back 2 weeks. 2 weeks can't happen. she still had those jeans set aside in the back. She go, here they are. I tried them on again, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I had $11. I couldn't do it. So then I told her, I'll be back in another week. So another week, I came back. I tried on the jeans again. And I finally decided, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I never paid that much for a pair of jeans in my life. I gave her the money. When I gave her the money, it was all in coins. I started crying like a little baby. And I went home with my jeans, right? And I wore them to school every day. Every night I washed them in the bathtub by hand so they wouldn't wear out. I did that for 6 months, man. And that's how I got my first pair of Levi jeans. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions. Anything you'd like to ask? Yes, Dr. Jones.
Are you still wearing those jeans?
I gained a little weight. But I'm going to get down back to my fighting weight.
No,
I don't have any anymore.
well, I want to give you applause and comment. And I think I'll say this as a faculty. This is not Dr. Jones. This is faculty. I see a lot of BMWs, Teslas, SUVs on campus when I'm at UT Arlington. And I see that I'm in these discussions about the large sum of student loan debt. And I'll be very frank. I think that what you brought up today, the culture, is so important because in some ways, when you get your first degree, there's a perception to your family you've made it. And your friends go out and they get big time jobs. And there's there's going to be that pressure to go out there and borrow money to live that lifestyle. I get to see it 30 years later, right, Luis? Right, Edgar?
My God,
we see it 30 years later where that person went and bought them whatever car was exciting at the time. Now they have kids going to college. They have grandkids going to, being born, and they're still paying for that car that they bought in college. And they're driving a real raggedy car because the debt is caught up with them.
Right.
And if I could stress out, I think graduate school, I do think it's just crucial to go now to graduate school. But I am saying that this is where it's hard because a lot of international students will live 5 to a room and they minimize the amount that they're paying. They cut their budget to the bone. But when they graduate, they're not carrying this massive amount of debt and mental debt. American students, US born students tend to try to buy that lifestyle. And if there's one thing I can say, this budgeting thing, Luis made it sound very sexy. It's boring. It sucks. Budgeting sucks. But if I could implore you, whether you ask your parents, ask your grandparents, doing it well while you're trying to get this extra education has such a big blessing for you 20 years, 10 years, 30 years down the road. And if I can just implore you that this budgeting lesson is about really constraints and being focused on the task at hand. Otherwise, it just has such negative consequences, especially for US born Black, US born Latino, Latina, and tribal. It's just, if you look at, even the national election talks about this. I'm sorry, I just want to chime in as a faculty member, not as Dr. Jones.
Even now, at my age, every once in a while, I catch myself thinking poor. It never goes away, man. It never goes away.
Now, don't forget to mention about how retailers do a good job of marketing.
Oh.
Now, I saw just the other day, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "What? They're allowing you to take as long as 84 months to pay off a vehicle. Do you realize how much money you would have paid if you select that option?"
You bought that car twice.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. Back in my day, it was 4 years. That was it.
Oh my God.
But
I got 3.
oh, okay, yeah.
Hey, I bought my car for $150, but it only went backwards.
Well, Judy, they didn't let us borrow money when I was in college.
Correct.
Y'all may not believe this. If you were a minority, you could only borrow X. So the reality is most of us went and got jobs, and the reality, it was better for us. For my generation that doesn't have all this debt, we couldn't borrow it. I actually am so concerned about you guys because they let you borrow for a dog, cat.
Mhm.
I mean, for a big toe, pillow. I mean, God dang, yeah, it could borrow for a hamburger,
Yeah.
and you never pay it off. I'm
We,
sorry.
we had Pell Grants when Edgar and I were in school. Pell Grants
What?
and scholarships. Yeah. Well,
Man, well, I paid my $150 car cash.
gotcha.
And then I sold my stereo to fix the transmission.
My goodness.
Oh, I had ball tires. So in the winter, when everybody else was sliding out the road, I let half the air out of my tires and I drove all the way home, never slid off.
Wow.
There was a very good student of mine years ago, a civil engineering student, ideal candidate for graduate school. And I'm trying to get her to go on to graduate school, and she just refused. And she finally came to me and told me, she said, and this was, I said, years ago. So $7,500 doesn't sound big to you now, but she said she had $7,500 in credit card loans that she had to go to work to pay off. And I wish I could track her down now to see what happened, but she was an ideal graduate school candidate.
God.
And I said, you have more debt than I do. And I'm working as a professor there. And I had a house, and a car. And she had more debt on her credit card than I did. And that prevented her from going on to graduate school. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They'll send those cards to you in the mails that already approved.
Oh, yeah.
Already
Just remember,
approved.
one last word,
Yeah.
students, you don't want to make payments into the afterlife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Is it
So
true?
did they? Oh, Chica looks like she has a question. Her hand was raised. Maybe it's something else. But I'm gonna go ahead to the next room. And did you guys did the survey and everything for the end of the session?
It's posted there.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Looks like we got about 4 or 5 more minutes before we have to wrap up. Okay, guys.
Go ahead, ask your questions.
Good talking.
Thank you so much for this. Because for me, coming from Nigeria, we don't have scholarships or financial aid, and high school is more expensive than college for us. So every money that goes into that, it's paid from your family, and we don't even have summer jobs to contribute to it. So this is very helpful, and thinking about going to graduate school. But I did want to ask, do you advise to get a credit card? Because I hate loans. I try to avoid them as much as I can. So would you advise getting a credit card or no? Because I don't have one and I don't plan to get one anytime soon. But
Okay, let me tell you the secret on credit cards. I only get a credit card that I know that I can pay off each month. So sometimes, but if you don't, that's when the interest builds up. So my credit cards, I have to pay at the end of each month, the ones I have. Okay, I only have one that I use for travel because of the university, but they're paying for my travel and they're paying for everything. It's not coming from me. So credit cards I've only used during emergencies or something like that, but also without any credit, you don't build a credit. What do they call that, Dr. Jones? Credit?
Your score, your credit score.
Yeah.
Rating.
Yeah, Dr. Jones has it right. So little by little, you build your credit score. But you know what your credit score is based on? How well you make your payments and if they're on time. But if you get one, you try to get the lowest rates and you shop around, because most credit cards, okay, they're going to charge you anywhere between 25 to 30% interest.
Yeah.
Easy. But that's if you don't pay them off each month. So you take a look, you look at the interest rates, but I only use it for either emergency or if I could pay it off, because I knew I didn't have the money right then, but I know I'm gonna get my next check. I budgeted so I could pay off that credit card on what's due so it doesn't gain interest. Any other advice, Dr. Blivens, Dr. Jones?
I do the same thing. Yeah, I use my credit card. I use it for the points, but I only use it. I know I have the money, so I said rather than I don't carry cash, so that's the reason. But I pay it off each month. I had a credit card once that I sent the bill in, and they charged me $2 for interest, and it stated the date they it was paid and the date the interest was paid. And they were the same dates. I got on the phone, called up that credit card company, said, "Why are you charging me $2 for this fee here?" And it shows that the payment, they took the $2 off of my credit card, $2. Okay. So yes, that's my approach too. So I agree with you. Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Well, my daughter's at Howard, and we fight about this because I don't believe in debt. I don't believe in credit cards. But because she's at Howard, and I try to track her expenses, and I'm her dad, and she does random stuff like needs a computer or lab fee. So I think that student loans are 3% interest, credit cards are 20%. And I think I don't want to think like an old man. Old man knows to pay it off. Young people, they have a rage and they have a white party or something happens, they're messed over. So truly, I think for me, I think a debit card. But also I recognize that when you're in college, if you have a credit card, you're going to use it. Mm-hmm. So to be honest with you, I'm fighting with my daughter. So I can't tell you, we have a credit card. I pay it off. I make her borrow the money from me. But I think that as a student, I'm careful because how you manage your loan or your scholarships and a savings account dictates your ability to pay off that credit card in an emergency. So I'll just say this, because I think about when I was a student and when I had an inter semester in a frat party, you couldn't stop me from using a credit card. But I say that I would recommend a debit card and looking at your savings account, build that savings account up, because I think student credit card debt is actually trending way high. And at 24%, it's almost as bad as student loan. Mm-hmm. But you can bankrupt it. That's unfortunate. I shouldn't know what that means, but I actually think that, and again, I don't have a perfect answer because I'm a dad, right? I'm fighting with my daughter right now. But I will say it's better to have 3% interest than 24% interest. I think you should put money up in savings, like $1,000 if you can, and just be very careful if you have one. It's almost poison because you use it once, now you're in a cycle and can't pay it off till you graduate. So I think that's my best answer is if Luis is right, Edgar's right. If you pay it off, you can, but honestly, if you're using it, you're probably, not thinking about it. So I would recommend an emergency savings fund, a debit card that had access to that. And if you have a credit card, I would treat it like poison. But that's at 24, 20, 21, 22, as opposed to being my age, which is like, I know better. I'm using points. Yeah. But at your age, I would be very, very cautious.
I think I went down your path because I don't have a credit card. My dad, I told him I didn't want one. So I have a savings account that I just put my money towards. So.